Hey everyone, welcome back to Automation. So I've been thinking about destroying cars lately, and so I was also thinking naturally about the Endurodrome, and I wanted to try and make an automation car that would last a long time on the Endurodrome. So that's what we're going to be attempting to do today. Now there are a few considerations when making something that's actually going to withstand the Endurodrome. One is wheelbase, another is width, and then we need to make something that's not going to be too powerful because if it goes too fast then it'll just break. But this is sort of a fail race style driven to destruction, except I'm not going to take his format. Instead I'm going to build something that I think will last on that, and then we'll try it and see if it's actually going to be able to make it. So my theory is that we don't want a super long wheelbase and we don't want a super short wheelbase, so we're just going to go somewhere in the middle, 2.5 meters, and we'll make it a hatchback just for fun. Now the thing about it being a hatchback is that we can give it a bit of ride height, and that's what we need for this. We want to have decent ride height as well. I don't want to spam the quality sliders. I'm just going to leave them where they're supposed to be, just at 0. If I was going to spam them, we might be able to get a bit more distance out of this, but we don't really need it. Okay, so my theory with the disaster that you're seeing in front of you right now is that steel is tough. Light truck monocoque, that's pretty tough. And then light HS steel will just make it a little bit lighter, but it's still steel, which means that this thing is probably going to weigh quite a bit, but it should be reasonably strong, hopefully like a light truck, even though it's very obviously a Renault. Let's make it a transverse engine. Actually, you know what? Let's make it longitudinal. It's not going to be very big, I'll tell you that. The rear suspension and the front suspension need to be incredibly tough to be able to take this. I'm actually going to make them both coils. This thing is basically a truck underneath. Now my theory in all of this could be just way off. I could be completely out to lunch with my design on here, but we're going to find out when we actually test it. However, I do know the cockroach of vengeance is the inline 6, and apparently that's not going to fit longitudinally. So I flipped it over to transverse, so the engine is going to be sitting sideways. However, doing that we cannot get 4-wheel drive. I do want to do 4x4 instead of all-wheel drive, but we need power to every wheel, so let's go ahead and switch that back around. So if we don't care about RPM, we can get this thing up to 2.4 liters, which means this is going to be a longitudinally mounted 2.4 liter inline 6 in a car that is really not made for that. It's going to be pretty weird because the engine bay probably stops here. This thing is going to be deep into the transmission tunnel. I'm just going to make this stuff out of aluminum because, well, it'll just be a little bit lighter on the car. It's already going to be way too heavy. We'll keep things simple with an overhead cam and again aluminum. We don't want to make this engine too strong. Like, it needs to be reasonable, but it doesn't need to be anything crazy. I'm thinking we probably only need 150 horsepower or something like that. And I'm not going to make it turbocharged because that would probably mess up what I'm trying to do here. But let's go EFI and we'll just go for a standard intake, regular fuel. That should be fine. Immediately we're making a good amount of power. Basically the gist of this is I don't want to stress this engine at all because that's not going to work. But I don't want to stress this engine at all because if we're stressing things, then they're bound to break when we need them the most. Okay, to help deal with these piston issues, I've actually dropped it down to a 2.25 liter. So it's a little bit smaller, but that just means we can be a bit higher in the RPM. Currently our limit is right here, so we don't want to break anything. So just a few tweaks later and we're up to 146 horsepower at 208 newton meters. I think that's going to be fine. We'll see what it looks like in terms of top speed and such, but we should be okay. We don't really need much top speed, we kind of just need that torque, and this inline 6 definitely has that. Okay, so we only have one option for the actual body style and body morphing on this. They did actually put out a patch to make the body morphing work, which is good, so we'll hopefully be able to make something horrible out of this. Actually, for the most part, I almost want to leave it the same. We can make it a wider track width, but doesn't really need that. It doesn't need to be styled any differently than this. I think that's actually just going to be fine as is. So I hardly ever make cars green, and in this case I've decided, let's make it green. I don't know, like, this thing is actually already tall as is. Just from the way it's looking right now. That's probably because it's mostly truck based, but this is also going to look like a car in terms of styling, so let me just quickly go through this. It doesn't really matter what it looks like, as long as it drives well, that's all that I care about. These small cars are always very interesting to design, like looking at this here, I don't know, I'm not exactly happy with it, but it'll work. Again, the colors of this and the design of it don't really matter. As long as it looks tough, we should be okay. Oh no. Well, looks like we're gonna break out some styling I haven't used before. We gotta go subcompact somehow. It really should be illegal for me to design cars, especially when all I'm coming up with these days is stuff like this. Okay, I'm not responsible for the nightmares you're gonna have looking at this, but this is indeed the finished product for the front. Yes, it has orange tiers, don't worry about that. And to the rest of the car, I haven't done much yet, but I'm just gonna kind of fill things in and I'll show you what I've got at the end of it, and this time I won't forget mirrors. Alright, I don't think I've forgotten anything, but here we have the back. I've used headlights on the back, but they're rear lights now, so hopefully they work. And also, I put a nice, like, massive downturn exhaust here, which I think is going to look cool. But other than that, it's very, very basic. I just kind of slapped on one of these as well. I don't know. We'll just randomize the plate there. I'm not too familiar with European plates. But overall, I think it's looking okay. I mean, it's not great, but it doesn't need to be. Let's see if this thing can actually survive the Endurodrome. So obviously, something that's very important is that it actually functions, and it functions well. So that's why we're going to be tuning this properly, hopefully. But I'm just going to go for a manual gearbox. We'll just make it a 5-speed. It's not going to be particularly fast. For now, we'll just turn this stuff up and down, and I don't know, we'll get to there when we get to there. But what I want to do is go for a manual locker with 4-wheel drive, so if we happen to lose a wheel or something like that, we can just lock it and then hopefully drive with the other wheel. That's my theory, at least. Which means that this thing could potentially be completely rear-wheel drive, which doesn't make any sense at all. Also, this ride height, it's gonna get way worse, so get ready. So we'll go for chunky off-road wheels, and I'm going to make them pretty wide. Hopefully that'll help it to last. And obviously we want to actually, you know what, that's probably a bit too wide. I think I'd rather have good offset than just huge wheels. There we go, that's a bit better. That's gonna be good. As well as the tire diameter needs to be big, because this thing needs to take jumps and such. Those are huge wheels for something like this. Okay, it's a bit of a monster truck, but it's gonna be a fun monster truck, I think. On to the brakes. Now, brakes don't matter as much in this. We'll just give it vented discs in the front, make them 4 pistons, and solid discs in the back. We'll make those 2 pistons. We'll adjust that when we can. Okay, I'm gonna go for an off-road skid tray, or it's an under tray as well. No cooling flaps needed, no brake airflow needed at all. That should be fine. And this kind of thing, it's just about weight in this case, so because we kind of already made it out of steel, I'm gonna take out the back seats, and that'll hopefully help. And no safety or traction aids or anything like that, we don't need it. Okay, here's where things get very important. We need to find a good suspension for this. So what I was thinking is probably get away with twin tube, but we're going to need off-road sway bars, and we'll come back to that tuning in a bit. But just quickly, tap that off-road preset, and my goodness, this thing is going to be tall. But I don't want it to be that tall, it needs to be a little bit shorter than that. Good ride height, but not gonna roll over is what we're after. Okay, back over to the graphs. So our top speed is actually going to be around there, 221.6. Looks like we can get it up just a little bit more, but we're not going to be going much faster than that anyways, so no big deal there. Spacing's pretty important in all gearing. Basically, we want to make sure that this thing will actually need to shift at some point, otherwise it's just not going to work out too well for us. So I'm going to put it up to 60, and I think that should be fine. Our manual locker is going to help with wheel spin, so I'm not too concerned about that. It's only 4.5%, and then all of it's in first gear anyways, so we're not going to be spending too much time in first gear, I don't think. Okay, strangely enough, I guess it's maybe not that strange. We're into the oversteer category, but I'm fine with this setup, so I'm not going to worry about that. And brakes are nice and strong. They actually can be shrunk down a little bit. So yeah, we're good with this too. Yeah, it has negative downforce, which means it's making uplift, which is unfortunate, but it doesn't matter because we're not going to be getting up to these speeds anyway, I don't think. This is a pretty slow track. Also, 10.4 liters per 100 kilometers. Not great, but actually that's about what my car in real life does, and it's not terrible either. Okay, let's take a look at this thing. It weighs 1,243 kilos. That is pretty darn heavy for 146 horsepower. So it should move reasonably well, and if not, I'll have to come back and retune the engine and put some more power into it. But quickly, I think I need to give it a name, and then it's probably time that we took it over to the Endurodrome. Well, I think the Enduro Survivor is ready to go into BeamNG. Let's try this lad out, and yeah, we'll see if any changes need to be made to it to actually make it better off-road. Although it should theoretically be good off-road. It has all of the things it needs. The wheelbase isn't huge, but we'll see. Alright, so this is what the car looks like in Beam, and to be honest, I think I'm onto something. I drove this car around the Endurodrome once, and it came back without too many issues at all. Maybe not as good as some of the SUVs, the actual Beam SUVs that I've been able to drive around here for multiple laps without having any issues at all, but this thing really soaks up the bumps, and it is surprisingly good off-road, so let's give it a go. One thing that I forgot that we would have as an option is low range. I don't think I'm going to use that just yet, but we're just going to stick with four-wheel drive, diffs unlocked, and high range for this run. Now, if you don't know what the general rules for the Endurodrome are, or at least the Driven to Destruction series by Failrace, he drove his cars pretty fast through the track, and I'm going to do that too. I'm not going to max it out because this thing is surprisingly quick. I think it might have been the short gearing that I put on there, but yeah, this little SUV slash car slash hatchback thing is surprisingly fast, so I don't want to destroy it on the first round just because I'm going too quick for it. So what I'll do is I'll take it a little bit easy so you can see what I'm talking about, and then I'll really try to kill it and we'll see how good it can do. But so far you can see, like, it's so bouncy, it soaks up the bumps really well, like surprisingly so, and it's reasonably quick. I was worried that 146 horsepower wouldn't be enough, but so far so good, no issues at all, although I suspect that our axle is slightly to the side there, which is the only thing I think that we should really be afraid of on the front end. Now this jump here is a legendary killer of cars, and it's supposed to be, but this thing takes it like a champ. There's no issue at all there, and again, we can just continue on. And this one is also pretty tough. Ooh, not too bad, especially when you come off the landing and hit a rock on the side or something. Like, not much you can really do about that, but in this case, not a big deal. Now, the only area where I had issues before on my previous run, and this is kind of the area where you suspect to have problems, is the massive jump. I think I might have taken it a little bit too fast, kind of spun off of it and did a couple flips and bent one of the front suspension pieces, I suspect. But here's that jump right there. We'll go for it at a pretty hard pace, but nothing too crazy. I was well over 100 kilometers when I did it last time. So here we go. Ooh, that was really easy there. Not too bad at all. Like, I think if I was trying to make this car last, it could really last on this track. I could basically do a lap without having any issues at all if I wanted to. Assuming I got lucky with the landings, that is. But if I really wanted to get it to brake as well, I'm pretty sure it's easy to do that. So as we round our first lap off here, let's go ahead and give that end of things a go. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to be trying to go a lot faster, and I haven't reset the car at all, so we're still going with the damage that we had last time, which means that I think the axle is ever so slightly bent to one side. Yeah, it's pretty easily seen there. Okay, I've decided to reset it entirely just for this run, just for the sake of, I don't know, trying to compare apples to apples instead of riding it on one broken run into another. But hey, it should still be able to do decently. Okay, so the first few bumps on the track are not a big deal for this. I was hoping that I would have to come into a situation where the four-wheel drive I'm using is necessary, but so far it's just not. I don't need it at all at this point. I mean, being all-wheel drive would have put us in the same situation that we're currently in, although the ratios are different between four-wheel drive and all-wheel drive in terms of where the power goes. One thing that is easier because of that is the mud pit. We have no issues at all going through there, just because of four-wheel drive, off-road tires, that stuff. No problems there at all. Alright, around the first couple tricky obstacles, and no significant issues even driving hard. Still bouncing like crazy though. Goodness, the high center of gravity is not particularly good on this vehicle. That's why I was worried about making it too tall, just because I didn't want to destroy it in that way, just have to be rolling over all the time. Alright, coming up to the jump. The jump is a bit of a legendary radiator killer from what I can remember from that series of old. So I'm hoping that we don't destroy ours on this. Oh, that was pretty decent. Oh, oh, never mind. Here we go. Well, the car's rolled over, but to be fair with it, I'm going to turn it off while I try to roll it back over. Alright, there we go. That just means that it gets a slight break, I guess, but also it just means it's not going to let any oil get in the wrong kind of places as it's trying to cycle through. Well, we're kind of bent now. That is 100% for sure. The coil suspension is doing us some good though, jumping over these things, as nothing is broken really that significant, other than the axle being shifted, but that seems to be fine so far. Obviously handling is affected, but overall we're doing okay. So I guess this is probably a good time to tell you about this idea I had, and I think I might do a video on it a little bit later on next week, another BeamNG specific video, but I was thinking about crossovers. You know, those like cars that are also kind of SUVs, but they're really just mini SUVs, or CUVs perhaps? But I was thinking that, oh jeez, going in there a little bit hot. Yeah, I was thinking that it would be cool to get the average BeamNG crossover and attempt to drive it off-road seriously and see how good it does in comparison to, say, an actual SUV. Now obviously crossovers are basically just cars, so they're not going to do too well, but it would be fun to compare them in terms of durability off-road on something like the Endurodrome, and also just general off-road ability, considering they all have all-wheel drive for some reason. So yeah, I think it'll be cool to try that. Needless to say, I haven't got much to say about this vehicle, because this is a pretty graceful event that's happening here. We're just kind of flowing through the map. No major issues so far. Despite that shifted axle, this thing is still moving. I might even have to cut these videos, unlike the Driven to Destruction ones, where they kind of just go and go and go. Alright, we're a little bit off the track here, but I'm kind of running over some auxiliary rocks that we don't really need to run over, but at this point we may as well. No issues with the back end at all at this point, probably because it's not taking the brunt of the jumps, and also it seems like the weight of this thing is mostly in the front. At least I would suspect so, having such a huge engine. Like, would it make more sense to have an inline 4 or an inline 3 to make this much power? The answer is absolutely yes. But hey, the gimmick of the cockroach inline 6, I couldn't pass that up. Okay, big jump, round 2 coming up. Let's see if we can do any more damage. Oh, that's actually really smooth, and oh, that's not too bad. The axle is completely off to the side, and the wheel is currently attempting to escape, but so far we're doing okay. Okay, it seems like our front suspension is entirely collapsed now. That's not great, but the car is still turning, so I'm still considering this to be mobile. Basically, the gist of the rules are, if it decides to quit and it can no longer drive above maybe 20 kilometers an hour, we'll have to stop, but yeah, so far we can definitely do more than that. Now this kind of thing is way less exciting with automation cars because they can't be destroyed in the same way that BeamNG cars can. Obviously BeamNG cars native to this game have a lot more detail, a lot more nodes, a lot more things that can fall off and crack and all that kind of stuff, but still I think it's interesting to drive these kind of automation ones around. They do tend to be more durable than BeamNG cars. However, that doesn't speak for all of their components. I tend to lose wheels on automation cars way more often than BeamNG, but maybe that's just me. Okay, so soon, because we're currently on our second lap, we're gonna have to start resorting to a few gimmicks here to allow the car to be further destroyed in ways that you might not expect from a normal Driven to Destruction episode. I don't know, I've got a couple ideas on things that we can do. This one in particular has options because of four-wheel drive and high and low range and such. It'd be interesting to try and lock the diffs and drop it in low and see what difference that makes. Okay, rolling over has become a consistent part of life at this point, as I've rolled in a couple more places than I did last time. However, back over to the rocks, seemingly no issues in the last couple events, and again, this thing is way too soft to get hurt there. Ooh, that was a bit of a hit. Ooh, that was another bit of a hit there. That front axle is taking a heck of a beating, but still, it remains off to the side and still working just fine. I think it'd be cool to try and like watch an AI attempt to path this course. I don't think this course has AI, but that would be something that'd be quite interesting. If somebody knows how to do that, I have no idea. Alright, big jump again, going over 100 k's an hour, and oh, this is not going to be good. Okay, never mind, that was not too bad at all. Could have been way worse. Well, our small green thing is looking a little worse for wear, and I also accidentally put it in neutral. The wheel is even more off to the side. We're actually an open wheel racer now. I bet you didn't expect that. Believe it or not, this thing is still turning. I guess it just doesn't have the same kind of components in the front suspension that Beam cars have, because steering is one of the things that gets destroyed the most often on these courses like these. That's kind of what this thing challenges. Okay, so this is lap number 3. I think it's time that we put on a few different gimmicks here. We're going low range, and we're going to lock the rear diff. I don't think that this is going to do too much, but it might change things up just a little bit. Now we have a lot more torque to work with, and we're actually going to be using our 5 gears. We're probably not going to be moving as fast, and our handling is going to be adversely affected due to the rear being locked up. Interestingly, the axle has shifted immediately and is almost completely gone. Yeah, you can see the coil springs under there are just entirely detached, and I'm not sure that four-wheel drive is even working these days. We'll have to see. Okay, just a quick roll over there. Actually, you know what? Low range wasn't working out too well, but I'm going to lock the front diff and see if that does anything to our drive here. The engine, as you would predict, is rock solid. No issues at all. But, wow, this handling is absolutely borked. This is getting worse and worse here. We almost need to just lose the front wheels, like... There isn't anything good coming from up there. Okay, this is my second attempt here to get this thing moving properly. It seems that we've lost all steering entirely, and it's also inverted, which is really awkward, I'm gonna have to say. I don't know how this happened. I guess the axle got twisted, but when I turn to the left, the car turns to the right. It's a little bit confusing now. This is going to take a minute to get warmed up to. Well, I think it's probably time that we took off four-wheel drive, because we don't really need it anymore. As long as the rear wheels are moving... oh, there's the steering back. Okay, good. So let's continue on anyways. Yeah, I guess having the drive shaft twisted like that wasn't doing us any favors. Ooh, those brakes on the front are strong. Another rule of the series was that if the car can't turn a corner, then yeah, it's pretty much done, and I agree with that one as well. So we'll kind of keep that in mind, but I fear that we might be pretty much through with this car. It just is not steering anymore. I really wanted it to go out in a like blaze of fire, but unfortunately it seems like it's just gonna go out due to steering issues, which is really just sad. I always hope for a swift death for these vehicles, but in this case, not so much. Well, into the mud pit again we go. Maybe this will help twist things up a little bit underneath, but the front axle is basically under the car at this point, so yeah, it barely even exists. And the rocks have a whole different idea for us as we attempt to take it up the side. Yeah, you know what? I think that's gonna be it. The car has unfortunately died, and the reason being a dislocated front end, but other than that, it's fine. It could totally drive more. The engine is good. The rear differential and entire rear axle is fine. Yeah, it's just the front end that got destroyed there. So I would say overall that was a pretty decent success. This car has proved itself to be quite good off-road and just a reasonable driver overall. It's pretty durable. I don't know, like, we don't exactly have anything to compare it to on this track, but I think that was approximately 3.5 laps. I'm not exactly trying to do this scientifically, but if I was, it'd be interesting to see which of my cars is the toughest around this track. The only way to make things fair in terms of this kind of situation is to drive cars at their limits, or like close to their limits, but that just means that fast cars are always gonna die. Slower cars like this one, like I made it slow on purpose. They are going to last longer because they don't take jumps as hard. It's pretty basic physics in that case. Plus this one is made to last, so I'm hoping that it actually would outlast some of my other creations. Like on this jump, for example, it can really soak that up easily, and as long as you land right, you can escape that thing without any issues at all. It's like a pretty decent trophy truck of some kind. But yeah, overall I'm pretty pleased with this thing. Let me know what you think of it in the comments. I know it's pretty horrendously ugly, but I'm gonna say that the backlights are actually quite good. They work as intended, so I'm pretty happy about that. Sometimes backlights in these games, or just lights in general, don't work out too well, but this is a bit of an exception. So yeah, as I said before, let me know what you think of this car in the comments, and also what you think of my idea for a BeamNG video. I'm probably going to end up doing it anyways, but now it's just a bit of a spoiler for those who are watching through this one. Either way though, I'm pretty content, and I think it's time that I moved on to something else here. This channel is supported by viewers like you. We have Canadian Steel, Overlord, Dr. Ivo, That Riced Out Explorer, QT Bear, Terry Williams, The Most Random Person, Sick D Cars and Stuff, Boris Ramirez, Daniel, Justin, and Jacob. Thank you all for your support. Appreciate you guys a lot. And if you want to join this crew, make sure to hit the join button. And if you made it all the way through the video to this point, you probably enjoyed it. Subscribe for more. I'm going to keep making this stuff. I'm getting really close to 30k, so here's hoping that happens soon. Anyways, see you guys again at another point. I've got more videos coming up next week. As long as I'm still laid off for this current pandemic, I'm going to keep making 4 videos a week, so look forward to that.